The building had fallen into its usual rhythm of clattering keyboards, muffled conversations, and the occasional echo of heels clicking against polished marble floors. It was a corporate tower, owned by one of the city's wealthiest companies, where million-dollar deals were made in air-conditioned boardrooms. But below all that noise, quietly moving from one hallway to the next, was Daniel, a single dad and janitor. Daniel never drew attention to himself. He wore the same gray uniform, pushed his cleaning cart faithfully from office to office, and always greeted people with a polite nod, though most barely looked his way. To them, he was invisible. But to him, this job was survival, his only means of putting food on the table for his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. The other employees knew little about his life. They didn't know he'd once dreamed of being a pianist, that his mother had taught him to play on an old upright piano in their small, rented house when he was a boy. They didn't know music was in his bones, the way breathing is in the lungs. But life had been cruel. When his wife died in childbirth, dreams became a luxury. Bills, diapers, and groceries became his daily composition. One afternoon, Daniel was wiping down tables in the break room when he overheard a group of young executives laughing. They were planning for the company's anniversary gala. There would be speeches, fine dining, and live music. A renowned pianist had been scheduled to perform, but he had cancelled at the last minute. "That's just great," one of them scoffed. "Where are we going to find another pianist in 2 days?" Their eyes wandered, and suddenly one of them pointed at Daniel with a smirk. "Hey, Danny boy, don't you mess around on the piano sometimes? I saw you near the lobby piano last Christmas when no one was around." The others chuckled. "Yeah, maybe we should let the janitor play for the CEO." Imagine that disaster. Daniel forced a small, embarrassed smile, pretending not to care, but inside his chest tightened. Music wasn't a joke to him, it was the only part of himself he'd kept alive. Still, he shook his head and returned to his work. But word spread. The next day, while Daniel was mopping the lobby floor, a manager walked by with a sly grin. "Hey, janitor, the team thinks you should play something for us today at lunch. You know, lighten the mood." The request wasn't kind, it was a dare. A setup for ridicule. Daniel wanted to refuse, but the thought of being mocked, fired, or seen as a coward froze him. At noon, a small crowd gathered in the lobby where the grand piano stood. Executives leaned against the walls, whispering, some already holding their phones up to record. They thought it would be funny, a janitor fumbling at a piano. Daniel sat down, his palms sweating, his heart pounding like a drum. He closed his eyes, and in that instant, he saw Lily's face. Her gap-toothed smile, her little drawings taped to their fridge. He remembered the nights she fell asleep in his lap while he hummed lullabies that had once been full piano pieces in his head. And then, he began to play. At first, the room was restless. A few chuckles, a cough. But the moment Daniel's fingers glided across the keys, the atmosphere shifted. The melody was tender, mournful, but powerful, like a story told without words. His hands moved with grace, painting pictures of sorrow and hope. It was a piece he'd written years ago when he thought his life still held promise. Silence fell. One by one, the executives lowered their phones. Their laughter died. People from other floors trickled into the lobby, drawn by the haunting sound. The notes rose and swelled, echoing off the marble walls, filling the building with something pure and unexplainable. Upstairs, in his office, the CEO himself paused mid-conversation. He stepped out, curious, and followed the music down to the lobby. And there he stood, stunned, as the janitor, the man no one noticed, played like a maestro. By the time Daniel finished, the crowd was frozen, as if afraid to breathe. And then came the applause, not the polite kind, but thunderous, heartfelt clapping that shook the lobby. But it was the CEO's face that shocked everyone most. His eyes shimmered, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. Finally, he walked forward, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Son," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I haven't heard music like that since my wife passed. You played her favorite song." Daniel's heart stopped. He hadn't known. He had simply played the piece that had carried him through his own grief, unaware that it mirrored the CEO's private pain. The crowd watched in awe as the CEO straightened. "This man isn't just our janitor. He's an artist. And from today, his life changes." With those words, everything shifted. Daniel was offered a permanent position as the company's in-house musician, with a salary that could provide security for Lily. More than that, the CEO funded Lily's schooling, ensuring she'd never lack the opportunities her father had lost. The employees, once blind to Daniel's worth, now greeted him with respect. And at home, when he told Lily, she threw her arms around him and whispered, "Daddy, Mommy would be so proud." That night, Daniel sat at their small kitchen table, staring at his calloused hands. He realized something profound. Sometimes the world tries to bury your gift, but when it's meant to shine, no ridicule, no hardship, no loss can stop it. And so, the janitor became a beacon of hope, not because he was discovered by accident, but because he dared to let his soul be heard. Sparkle's closing narration for YouTube. And if this story touched your heart, remember, kindness, courage, and hidden gifts can change lives in ways we never expect. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories that remind us all of the beauty in humanity.